So the Association of Study of African American Life and History has selected Black Migrations as the theme for 2019. The mission of ASLA is to promote, research, preserve, interpret, and disseminate information about Black life, history, and culture to our global community, especially here in Albany County. The Black migration saw approximately 6 million African Americans leaving rural areas in the southern states to the urban areas in the northern and midwestern states. Those African American migrants left the South due to harsh segregation laws and the limited economic opportunities available to them. Upon reflection of the theme and how it relates to Albany County, the first thought is of the Rapp Road community located in the Pine Bush area of the city of Albany. This community was founded by a Mississippi transplant by the name of Lewis Parson. In time, over 20 families settled in that primary plot of land. The story of the community has been published as a book titled Northern City, Southern Life, The History of Albany's Rapp Road Community by Jennifer Lamock. So at this time, it is really a great honor and pleasure to be here today and to see this presentation that we're about to see.
Beverly, thank you for coming here. And you know what, I have a coin for you in our county pin. I want to say thank you for everything you do, not just being president of your association, but to really going out there into the community, being another person out in the community and talking about our history. Because if we don't talk about our history, we're going to repeat our history. And unfortunately, that's been shown on a national level. So presentations like this, not just here in Albany County, throughout the state and throughout this nation, means so much to a community to let people understand why this happened and why they moved here and for better quality of life and to better their lives, to, you know, provide homes, to have a home for the first time. And it was actually interesting, Bruce, I was looking back there and I saw Louis McCoy built a home on Rapp Road, and only one person in the room believed me. It was my great-grandfather. That was Sherry. But I'm just going to say Sherry believed me. But it's so interesting to hear the history and why people moved here. And, you know, my family lived in Mississippi for a while, and my brother was born there. And, you know, so it's interesting to see the culture and what they brought to the area. Because I always say that to people, you know, it's, you know, I have an honor every now and then to welcome new immigrants to this country. And I always say to them, I said, don't dress like us, what you think Americans look like. Don't just conform to the foods, because I love trying different foods. And I always say to them, I'm more than welcome to come over to your house and try different dishes out if you want to have me there. But there is so much of our culture which makes us such a great nation because of people that have come to this country, because of the different cultures. And I believe that's why we're the best nation in this world.
The best way I can explain Rapp Road to you is by saying it was a community that was built through perseverance, love, and endurance, because we had a lot that had to be overcome. We didn't have banks that would give us loans back in those days. We had to rely on resources that were carried from Shabuta, Mississippi to Albany, New York. And when we got to Albany, New York, to the South End, a lot of what we encountered didn't jive with what we knew and were accustomed to. We were tenant farmers, sharecroppers, and we had to deal with a lot of racism. We had to deal with minimal education. We had to deal with lynchings. It was not a good time for blacks in the South. And people were looking for a way of escape to the North. Lewis, being a visionary, saw Albany as a way to draw people north. He had a twofold purpose. One was to change the living conditions for the people, but also two, to grow his church. That was the main objective, to grow his church. And that's how we ended up in the South End. But as I said, when we got to the South End, it was so very different from what the lifestyle had been in the South. There was plenty of land to farm, and we didn't have the crowded conditions that you had in the South End of Albany, not to mention the bars back at that time, gambling, prostitution. This was not somewhere a faith-based group really wanted to be in. Some elected to head back south. Some elected to tough it out. And then some, through the vision of Elder Parson, decided to head to the west end of Albany, to the city limits. In 2000, my Aunt Emma Woodard Dixon wanted to document our history because her fear was at some point people would never even know that we existed there. So in an effort to document our history, she started doing research with a young lady named Jennifer Lamack. Jennifer and Emma became glued to the hip, and they researched and they researched and they researched. As a result of their research, the book that you see here on the table, I can't reach it, but the book is a compilation of some of the information that they were able to document. The other thing that they were able to do as a result of their research was to get us nominated for the state and national historic registries. And that's something that we're very proud of. We've made a lot of strides since that time. We have become a charter in 2006. We have become a 501c3 so that we can go after grants and get funding to help us preserve and restore our community. But I'd like to tell you about the Rapp Road that I know and remember growing up as a child, because I can speak best to that. When I was a little girl, probably about maybe 4 years old, we lived down Pine Lane, which was an offshoot, a little dirt lane off of Rapp Road. And I can remember my mom pulling us up the road on a snowy day, kind of like what we're going to get today, pulling us up Rapp Road on a sleigh that one of the farmers had left for us, leaned up on our porch. And I have such warm memories of that sleigh ride, even now, going up Rapp Road. Rapp Road was nothing like what it is today. It was nothing but pine trees, sandy dirt road, and you could barely fit a car down Rapp Road. And I just remember thinking this was the best place in the world. In the summertime, we would go on hikes where you now see Crossgates Mall and down that end, and then across the road you see Crossgates Commons. Those were our playgrounds. And we were up and down those roads all day, all night. We didn't have to worry about what time we had to be in. If we wanted to stop and get lunch, we just raided somebody's garden. because there were gardens up and down the road. I cannot tell you how many times we snuck the salt shaker out of my grandmother's house so that we could get a tomato or a cucumber out of somebody's garden. My uncle, who was an avid gardener, my cousin Wanita's father, he grew the best watermelons. And when we were bold enough and dared enough, we would occasionally send someone into his garden to steal a watermelon. But the thing that I loved about Rapp Road, and I still love about Rapp Road, is how the families came together. It was a concerted effort on the part of everyone. Wanita's father was a mason. Another member of the community was a carpenter. Somebody else was an electrician. And I often wondered, how did they water their gardens? I wasn't sure how they watered their gardens. And I later years found out, because of their experience in the South, they had rigged up an irrigation system. And that's how they were able to water their gardens. And they had beautiful gardens. I mean, you had corn, you had peas, you had collard greens, mustard greens, any kind of greens you can imagine. We had, as I said, tomatoes, whatever produce that could be grown in this region was grown on Rapp Road. And it seemed so effortless for them. And it was because they transferred the experience and the knowledge that they had taken from Mississippi and transferred it to Rapp Road. There are some posters back there. If you look at them, it's very hard to distinguish Rapp Road from Shibuda, Mississippi. There's very, very little difference. The terrain, the only difference in the terrain is that it was mud down there. Here, or clay, I should say, not mud, but although it was more mud than clay. And there was sand here in the pine bush. And we had everything that a community would need to function. Church was the most prevalent because, as Elder Parsons had said, God led us here to Albany. So church was first and foremost. I can remember going to church all day Sunday, Tuesday nights, Wednesday nights were rehearsal, choir rehearsal, or a Friday night, and then on Sunday nights, YPWW, for the young people, willing workers, okay? So it was ingrained in us. And what we took from that helped us as a community on Rapp Road. If I needed something and you could help me with it, somebody was there to help you. Each of the home builders on Rapp Road had played a role in building these homes. They didn't have bulldozers. They had to dig with shovels. And they dug foundations with shovels. They didn't have concrete to pour. They used cinder blocks to lay their foundations. My grandparents bought their property in 1944. It took them 5 years to build their house. However, I have to do a little sidebar. My grandmother was a very Renaissance woman for her time. My grandfather was building the big house, but it was taking much too long because materials were not readily available, and he had to build as he could afford to build. My grandmother looked at it from an economic point of view, traveling back and forth from the south end of Albany to Rapp Road. She decided she was going to build a little shotgun house. Well, she got her little shotgun house started, and my grandfather still tapping when he could on the big house. Guess whose house got built first? And they lived in that house for those 5 years while the big house was being built. That's the kind of tenacity they had. Others came along and built. If you look at they're all little bungalows. Some were brick structures, some were wooden structures, but they all had the look of the homes that you would see built in Shibuda, Mississippi, because they took what they knew and transferred it to Rapp Road. When it came time for the children to go to school, they went to the Albany Public School Districts, but there was a problem because they had no way to get to and from school unless somebody drove them. The city school buses would not come to Rapp Road. It was too narrow. And they did not want a chance getting in the road and not being able to get back out the road. Again, I had an uncle who was very, very much a mechanic. He got a little machine, a little small dozer, and he and some of the men in the community widened what is now known the mouth of Springsteen Road, so that when the school bus came down Rapp Road, it had somewhere to turn around to go back out Rapp Road to Western Avenue. Well, they had the road widened now, but they didn't have a school bus. The church, again, pooled their resources, and they bought a school bus. Okay, now we have a school bus, who's going to drive it? My grandmother volunteered to drive the school bus. And I am so proud to say, I dare to say, she was probably the first black female bus driver in Albany, because she drove that school bus up and down Western Avenue every day to Rapp Road and back. And these are the kinds of determination that the community had. There was no such thing as I can't on Rapp Road, or we can't. Rather, it was how can we? What can we? And it wasn't easy, because you got to remember, these were individuals with little to no education. My grandmother had a 6th grade education, but I dare to say she would challenge any bookkeeper today when it came to keeping record of her bills and what had to be paid and what had to be done. So while they weren't educated people, they were resourceful people. And it was because of those resourceful people we still stand today. We're a remnant today. There were 27 homes at one time. There are now probably about 15 dwellings in the community. But we're determined that we are going to preserve that little piece of not only Albany's history, but the nation's history. Because we know what it took to get from Shabuda and neighboring states to Albany to Rapp Road. It was no easy feat. I had a cousin who lived on Rapp Road until he was 100 years old. He died probably a few months after his 100th birthday. And I asked him, I said, what was it like for you when you came to Albany? He said, we come in a car with 12 people and a baby. 12 people and a baby. He said the only thing we could carry was what we had on our backs, and he said, I might have had 1 or 2 more pairs of pants. He said, I know I only had 75 cents in my pocket, and I had a new bride. You can't get me to walk across the Walmarts with 75 cents, let alone travel from Shabuda, Mississippi to Albany, New York with 75 cents. But that's the kind of tenacity they had. That's the kind of faith they had. And it was because of this faith that they were able to accomplish the things that they did. They weren't looking to create a grand community, but they were looking for some place to raise their children, where their children had the freedom to run and play and not worry. They had food. I can remember my grandmother and my grandmother's sister and cousins gathering in her kitchen at the end of the summer. And they were canning the vegetables and fruits that they had harvested that they had grown over the summer. And I can remember the kitchen it would be hot, hot, hot in the summer, like around August. And there'd be steam everywhere in the kitchen. And they act as though it was no big deal, because they knew that they had to put food up for the winter. And they did. Whatever they had to do, they did it. In 1957, we had a cousin come and visit us from Buffalo, New York. Some of our family kept west and ended up in Buffalo. He came to Albany for a visit, and when he got ready to head back to Buffalo, they decided they wanted to give everyone a chance to say goodbye or hello who had not had a chance to see him. And so they decided to do what we now call our annual family reunion. Every year, the third weekend of August, on Rapp Road, there's a family reunion. And it was born as a result of that cousin coming to visit Rapp Road. And the thing that just really, really gets to me is how effortless they made things seem. We have many, 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 many more resources than they had. And yet they made it look so easy. I can remember my aunt and I being given a task to go and purchase chicken for family reunion. We were told where to go. We had to pick up a crate of chicken. Well, we were well-intended. We were going to get the chicken, but we sidetracked and went to the farmer's market first. And we sort of got carried away at the farmer's market, forgetting about the time. So we had to beeline it, or so we thought, to pick up the chicken. When we got there, the chicken place was closed. Now we're in trouble. And I said, what are we going to do now? She said, we got to think fast. I said, okay. So we ran down to the end of Rapp Road, thank God for Price Chopper, and we told them, we need as much chicken as you can give us. As much chicken as you can give us, because we have to have it for family reunion. And they knew about our family reunions, so they worked with us. What we didn't bank on was family members coming into the store as we were purchasing all this chicken. And I said, oh, we're busted now. But we got the chicken, thank God. And Price Chopper to this day donates to our annual family reunion. To this day, they donate. But here's the part that gets me. When we got home, we had all this chicken. And I said, now we got to clean it. We got to wash it. We got to pluck all the feathers off of it. And we're sitting in the kitchen, just as I had seen my grandmother and my aunt, cleaning, plucking, washing chicken. I said, I know they didn't enjoy doing this. You can't make me believe they enjoyed doing this. But they, again, made it look so effortless. And it was that way with everything they did. We had all kinds of activities as children on Rapp Road. My grandmother had a chicken coop. And there was nothing more exciting for me than for my grandmother to say, go out to the chicken coop and get me a few eggs. I don't know if anybody's ever experienced that, but to go out to the chicken coop and the eggs are still warm with feathers on them, and then you bring them to your grandma, and in a little while you've got some cornbread. That's the kind of experience I remember growing up on Rapp Road. I have another experience I have growing up on Rapp Road. One Sunday morning, my grandmother and I, because I was always following behind my grandma, she had taken and gone out to the chicken coop again, only this time she got a hen. And I remember it was Sunday morning because we were going to go to church, but she went out and did that first. She took the chicken, wrung its neck, flung it on the stump, took her hatchet. Okay, that was bad enough. But when I saw the chicken running around, and it didn't have a head on it, I was like, Grandma, why is that chicken still running around and it don't have no head? And she explained to me, my grandmother was a very gentle-spoken woman. She said, the nerves are still alive in its body. And until the nerves die, it's going to run around. That scared me so bad.
I'll take care of it.
Because I couldn't understand why that chicken was still moving and it didn't have a head. But these are the kinds of things I remember as a child growing up on Rapp Road. There was no chaos. We would go out in the morning after breakfast, and we always had a big breakfast. My grandmother would bake biscuits every morning. Biscuits and slab-based bacon and alga syrup. That was our breakfast. And we loved it. And she would even sneak and let us have some coffee. We were supposed to drink coffee, but she would just put a little bit of coffee in a cup, and then she'd add pet milk to it. And that was our coffee. And we just thought that was the best. And after breakfast, we were able to go out and play and go up and down the road in either direction. I can even remember one of our uncles coming from Shibuya, and he was here for a revival. And for the women that were not able to go to Tuesday noon hour prayer at our church downtown, they had a prayer house. They had a couple of prayer houses, but the one in particular was right up the road from my grandmother's house. And we would go to that prayer house meeting for prayer with the women, because they were watching the children in the community. And I remember this one time, the uncle from Shibuya came, and we wanted to follow him. Well, I can talk a little louder. The uncle from Shibuya came to Rapp Road, and we all went to that noonday prayer, or so we thought we were going. And when we came out to follow him to noonday prayer, he got a long switch. Now, I hope there's no CPS workers here. Because he got a long switch, and he told us, if you go into church with me, you got to go put on some clothes. We had our play clothes on. We had shorts on, or, the clothes you play in. And he told us, nope, you got to go get dressed. You go into the house of prayer. So we ran home. And I mean, we were little kids, but it was invigorating. We knew the power of prayer. We didn't always understand it, but we knew the power of prayer by listening to them and watching them. Years later, after my grandmother stopped with the chickens, we turned the chicken coop into our playhouse. We used to steal tin foil out of the kitchen and make jewelry. And we would go out to that chicken house and put on plays. Most of the plays were us mimicking people at church. And how they went forth in the dance, because we were a holiness church. So we remember, and we would imitate different ones and how we saw them at church. But that's how much it was ingrained in us. But the most important thing that I remember, which I try so hard to pass on to not just my grandchildren, but my great-grandchildren, is the power of prayer. Because at night, when we would lay down for the evening, everybody settled down in the house. We settled down to listening to my grandparents praying. We could hear them from their bedroom praying. No sweeter sound can you imagine than hearing your grandparents praying as you fall asleep. And I wish that my children's children could have known those experiences, because those elders have gone on. They paved the way for us. They literally paved the way for us, widening the road, maybe too wide. But the thing that they taught us was to persevere, to be patient, but more than that, to have faith. And that's why we come to events like this. We don't want our history forgotten. We want people to know Rapp Road is a very special place. And if it were left up to developers, we wouldn't be there. But we intend to stand and stand strong for what we believe in, which was our heritage and our legacy from those who came before us.
Records in the back?
One last thing, I would just like, and I hope I'm not out of order doing this, I would like Lil to stand up. And the reason I'm asking her to stand up is because Elder Lewis W. Parson was her uncle.
He's,
Uncle Louis, as I know him, is my grandfather's brother. Uncle Louis and Mr. Jack and my grandfather, who was Claude, they took turns driving that Cadillac up here and back. So we are part of the branch that stayed in the South End. So the first church down there was actually where Giffen School's playground is right now. But the same traditions happened in the South End. I remember coming up to Daddy Wilborn's, because Aunt Frances is my grandmother's cousin. Everybody's interconnected in this. in this. So we used to come to Daddy Wilborn's on Easter Sunday for Easter egg hunt. That was a big thing. The same traditions happened in the South End with a little twist. I remember my grandmother sending us out to the curb with a bucket of fish to clean the fish. Or if a knife needed to be sharpened, you go out to the curb and swish it back and forth. You come back in. If it wasn't sharp enough, she sent you back out again. And yep, the traditions, you know, what they brought here was what led us on. And, you know, I don't want to take up a whole lot of time, but me and my cousins were just talking about that. I have 13 aunts and uncles, you know, and plus 5 other branches of the family. So we had a lot of things that the ones behind us didn't have. So we're like a bond. Me and my cousins, we're other brothers and sisters, because we all spent a lot of times in the same houses. Like our parents went to work, we all went to our grandmother's house. You took off your school clothes and you put on your play clothes, and on Sunday you wore your Sunday go to meeting clothes. And then when the one above us grew out of their Sunday go to meeting clothes, guess where they went? They got passed down. They got passed down the line. So thank you so much for sharing that heritage. I never get enough of it. I never get enough of reading the several books that have been written about our family. That, you know, is amazing to us. It's a little different because we lived it. We knew all those people. So, you know, it's in our hearts. But thank you.
This may be for Wanita. My great-grandmother was Donna Young, and she went to Wilborn Temple. How is Wilborn Temple connected? Is it connected to Rapp Road? Because the Youngs are my other side of the family.
Good morning. How it's connected is when Reverend Parsons and Reverend Tolliver purchased that 28 tract of land, it was sold to the parishioners of 79 Hamilton Street. Okay, and that's how we had more families at that time living there. I'm going to add a little to Beverly. My father purchased his 2.5 acres in 1940. We've moved to Rapp Road in 1945. The reason it took 5 years to build a house was because it was in the middle of World War II, and supplies were limited. I came to Albany. I'm part of the Great Migration. I was 6 months old when I came to Albany in 1937. Rapp Road, as the first generation on Rapp Road, we sort of felt that we didn't like living in the country. We couldn't wait to get back to the city. So when we became adults, we did come back to the city. However, we've now, Bev and I and several others have come back to claim our property and our parents' heritage on Rapp Road. As a sidebar, I don't know if Dan McCoy is still here in the room. The house that he mentioned in his speech is still there. Most recently, the Rapp Road Historical Society has looked at trying to preserve and maintain the property. It's not right on Rapp Road. It goes in, and now that it's grown up, the brush has grown up, you almost don't know that this road is there, and there's a house there. And however, the other thing that Bev didn't point out, that road took you all the way across to the thruway. We owned most of the property up at that end of Albany. We go all the way down to the thruway behind Walmart's and the Home Depot. What happened is when Washington Avenue extended, because prior Washington Avenue stopped at Fuller Road, and you had to go right to Central Avenue, which would be Colony, or left to Western Avenue, which would be Westmere Guilderland. And when they moved Washington Avenue up through the middle, it runs up through the middle with Guilderland on one side, Colony on the other side, and the city of Albany, if you've ever been on Washington Avenue Extension, we go all the way up to the water tower. So when they put the extension through the extension through Washington Avenue, the properties that were on that side of Washington Avenue, some of the properties were moved forward, others were behind in their taxes and they lost their property. Walmart's is sitting on a family's property that the story is she was down paying her taxes when Crossgate had beat her here to pay the taxes, and they paid the taxes and flipped it to Walmart's. Home Depot is sitting on another parishioner's property from the religious base community, and basically that's what Rapp Road was, a community-based community. At one point, it was called the Holy Land, because everyone that lived out there was religiously connected at some point. We are now in the midst of trying to save the Rapp Road Historical property. We're on the state and the federal registry as being historical Rapp Road. And I want to thank you all for coming. If there's any other questions.
Okay, we are working hard through our 501c3 status to raise monies to try to get these homes that are in disrepair right now. We're trying to preserve them. But we have a bigger issue, at hand at the moment, and that is Crossgates Pyramid Corporation has a proposal to put 222 units, residential units, at the end of our road. And that's a problem for us because it will most definitely impact our community. We are working fervently to try to work things out because we do not want it to disturb our end of Rapp Road. So there will probably be a county meeting at some point, and I would say if you're able to come out to the county meeting when they bring it to Albany, because it is a Guilderland Township proposal, I would ask that you please come out and support us during the county meeting here in Albany.